Hey guys, Etec Cycles and Sleds here. We're gonna do a little bit of clutching install here in the shop today. All my guys are working. We got a shop full of sleds, so there is gonna be some background noise here and there. First off, this is gonna be on the Skidoo. This is gonna be the same from 2017 to current. They all run the P drive. It's all the same setup. So this will work for other clutch kits as well. If you're installing somebody else's clutch kit, this should work for you as well. So first off, we have a 2025 Skidoo Turbo R. First off, this is the kit here. What the kit comes with is our custom weights. They'll be loaded, set up for you, ready to install with the information that you give us. The only time you need to change this on the Skidoo is if you are doing a flash or putting a pipe on, doing a power additive, then you'll have to install the different weights. And at the end of the video, I'll show you how to pull these out of the sled and change them on the hill. It's really, really simple. We got a secondary spring. Your secondary spring's orange. You can always tell the ends are rounded. Where your primary spring is the yellow one, and you can see the ends are open. So primary spring, and then we have our custom helix here. There's the helix. So anyways, I'm gonna go over the tools that you're gonna need to be able to do this. Some of these you don't need, some of them you do kind of need. So you need a clutch puller. I don't even know what the technical term of this, but this screws into the end of your secondary clutch, into the shaft, and retains the gear and the washer that sit, and then it holds everything in place, makes it really easy to line up. The alternative is to using a screwdriver. I'll show you when I get this pulled out. If you are using a screwdriver, you got to be really careful you don't drop that spacer behind the gear down in the chain case. It'll come right out the bottom of it and you'll be needing a new chain case. And then you need a spring compressor. I'll show you how to use this. And then when we get done with this, we're going to re-torque the clutch back on. This is a clutch holder, just so we can hold the clutch and get it torqued. Talking about torquing the clutch, you need a torque wrench. You don't need power tools. Power tools save a little bit of time. 3/8 drive ratchet, 1/4 inch ratchet. We need a T25, 21 millimeter socket. That's for your primary bolt. And then one thing I did forget to throw in here is I need a 15 millimeter socket for your bolt in your secondary. A little screwdriver, 13 millimeter. I really like this 13 millimeter because it has a swivel on the end of it. It's a ratchet wrench. A little pair of pliers for the snap ring. Little hammer, rubber mounted, may need it, and may need a big hammer to tap on the end of this clutch puller to get the clutch to come off. We do need a T40. We're gonna go ahead and remove the belt. I normally don't pull the hood off, or this cover that's behind the secondary here, but I'm gonna pull it off so you guys can see what I'm doing a little bit better. Alrighty, now that I got the hood and the side panels off so you can see a little better, what you have right here is you have a bearing retainer. So you're gonna go ahead, this is 13 millimeter. You're gonna go ahead, pull this off, then we'll jump over to the other side. Little flathead screwdriver, we're gonna carefully work it behind this sill, get it underneath, go ahead, pop the little plug out. If you do have a stock can, you have to remove the can. So we're gonna get that out, then you can see our 15 millimeter bolt there. Remove that, and then this is where we're gonna put this guy in. We're gonna thread this right into the shaft. Or this is where you put a screwdriver. You put the screwdriver in the hole, and then you gotta keep it there and make sure it stays there. The alternative is pulling the whole chain cover side off. So once you get that screwed into there, normally they're pretty tight on that bearing, so I always just take a rubber mount. Sometimes I can get them to push out. But I'm just gonna kind of support this side and just and then that's gonna stay, it's gonna stay there. Out comes the secondary clutch. Now for the primary. I grabbed the wrong 21 millimeter. You wanna make sure it's the 12 point. Pull this out. And then as you come out, there's threads halfway in the clutch. You want to make sure you don't cross thread the bolt running it out. And then we're going to put our clutch puller in. Make sure we get that started nice by hand. Gonna run that down really tight. Sometimes they pop right off, but if they don't, get a nice hammer. Make sure you don't hit the clutch anywhere, and just give it right there. You probably didn't see it, you just jumped a little bit, but the clutch come right off. And then I'm gonna leave that in there because I need the puller to separate the clutch. I'm gonna remove the 6 bolts out of the harmonic balancer. So now you have to separate the harmonic balancer from the main clutch. That's why I left the clutch puller in. You want to make sure you have a really good amount of threads on there so you don't mess the threads up on the inside of the clutch. And then you're going to elevate it, and then you're going to hit it here, and it's going to separate. Sometimes you have to give it a pretty good whack. So there, separated that. Now we can remove this. One thing I do like to do that I'm going to hurry and do before I get too much farther. There's alignment marks on here, but I always like to take the clutch and just mark everything so that way I have no question. On the Skidoo clutches, you can see here that it has balance marks, alignment marks there and there. So when we put it back together, we'll always want to make sure we put everything back together exactly the same way that we took it off. Now that I got the clutch separated, this will move. So, good time to inspect your clutch. As you can see here, he has a little ding in there. Looks like he's ran something through. Not super bad, not gonna hurt anything. And then we have another mark. What you want to feel for is any high ridges, spots. If it gets too bad, you just got to replace the clutch. I'm going to take a little bit of Scotch-Brite. The only thing I'm doing is this one has a little bit of a raised lip, and what that's going to do is when the belt rides over that, it's just going to be pretty hard on the belt. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to knock down kind of that raised edge. Just going to go nice and even over it. Make sure I got rid of that sharp edge that it had there. Same thing on that guy. And if you notice, I'm going towards the center and then back out when I'm doing this. Same thing when you're cleaning the clutches. You don't want to go with the belt, you want to go against the belt. If your clutches are dirty, this one's not too bad, it's a little dirty. Get some paper towels, some carb cleaner. Just like squirt a little bit of carb cleaner on there. You don't want to put anything on that stays around like WD-40 or anything like that, because all it does is just attracts dirt. So a carb cleaner works great because it evaporates after a minute and it cleans good. And then I'm going to do the same thing, just in and out motion, and clean that up. I'm going to hurry to do the same thing on this side here, and then we'll clean the secondary up as well. Anyways, we're going to thread this down through. I set my opening so I can get to the snap ring, and then you're gonna go ahead and compress that spring so you can get to that ring. Then from here, lift that out. There's nothing in there or there. So stock springs coming out. R yellow spring going in. Put the cap back on, and then you'll be ready to compress the spring. But what I'm going to do beforehand is I'm going to hurry and change my weights because it's really easy to do at this point. One other thing you won't really want to look at, you want to look at your back torque washers, your thrust washers here. You want to make sure all them are good, they're not going flat. Always something good to check with them. From here, we're T25. We're going to go ahead, pull the weight pin out, slide the weights out. So I'm going to pull it out about 3/16 of an inch, and then I'm going to take a little hammer. I mean, you can use a big hammer, but you don't really need to. One thing you want to be careful, that's why I have this little extension on, so I'm not trying to hit that and risking dinging up the clutch at all. So I'm going to hold that right into place. You don't want to pull this bolt out too far. They do actually make a tool. Mine's got ruined, so I'm not using it, but they make a little tool that you pull this all the way out, you thread it in, and then you tap on that tool to drive the pin out. But you normally don't have to hit these very hard. So tap it like that. Now that it's completely most of the way loose, gonna run that out a little farther. Then pin comes right out, and then your weight assembly comes out. Then take our weight, slide it right in there. Sometimes I like to use an extra stack of magnets because I can just get the pin lined up a little easier. Alrighty, so one thing you always want to do, especially when you're moving with parts, rotating parts, really anything on a sled, is that if it doesn't need it, it still needs it. So I just recommend everything you put out, even if it has a nylock nut on it, just put some blue Loctite on it. Anything that comes out in this clutch is going to be detrimental and it's going to cost a lot. So really take your time, always use blue or red Loctite. Just take your time with it and make sure you install everything just nice and snug. Gonna hurry and get the rest of these 3 done and we'll go back together with it. Now we're gonna compress the spring, got all our weights in. One thing to note, don't leave this out because then you just gotta take it all the way back apart. And then one thing that you wanna make sure you do not do is, you can see now, it's always going to want to sit to one side or the other. So if you just start cranking down on this and you don't get it seated right, you're going to mess up this bushing here, or you're going to mess up this plastic collar. So one thing you really want to pay attention to is when you start tightening this up, you want to make sure you keep it nice and square or it's going to catch. And we're going to get that so we can get the snap ring back on, get the snap ring locked back into place. Put our little washer guy on. And then when I set everything off, I always set it so I pick and set. Then we're going to want to make sure we line up our harmonic balancer. I'm going to take some blue Loctite. Go ahead and Loctite all of our face cover bolts back on. Alright, so once I get those all snugged up, I go through them all, check them with an actual ratchet. Not exactly sure what the torque spec is on them, but I just always make sure they're, you know, I get them all nice and tight. I'd say right around that 20 to 24 foot-pounds. Once that's ready to go, our clutch is basically ready. What I'm going to do from here is I'm going to go ahead and line my sheaves up. Then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take some sort of a straight edge and I'm going to put it so I'm directly in line there and there. From there, I'm going to take it. Then if you just put a little bit of pressure on it, it seats it good enough. That way when you can get it lined up on the sled, it is keyed. So that way, you know, when you're wiggling it around back and forth on the sled, that's not moving around on you. Done with the primary there, go ahead and get started on the secondary. First thing we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and remove our bolt for our belt deflection adjustment. So once you get that loose, pull that all the way out to here, and then you'll see it doesn't wanna come off there. So what you gotta do is I just get a flathead screwdriver, get a big one. What you're gonna do is you're just spread this apart gently, and you're just gonna kind of wiggle it off the shaft. Once you get that off, take the washer off. Now that you've got there, we're gonna check that bearing, make sure that bearing's good. Pull 2 of these out to start. And you always wanna do 2 across from each other. Keep these little lock washers with it. And then from here, I'm gonna take it, set it on the ground, and then I'm gonna put some pressure on the shaft, downward pressure, and I'm gonna break these 2 loose. So once I get those break loose, I'm gonna basically take all my body weight and hold this down. Find that it's easier, instead of trying to grip the shaft, just get a little bit of padding. So from there, you have stock helix, stock spring, still got the Dillon washer there. So you got to get this one out the easiest way. tap the helix on the ground. So we're gonna reuse this. Gonna grab our helix. Go ahead, set that washer in there. And then our spring. And then super, super important when you're putting this together, this is not a cut. This is the cut there. So you have to have it in there. If not, it's not gonna work right. And it's going to cause havoc, and it's gonna break the rollers and cause a lot of issues. So when I set this in here, I wanna look and make sure I have it lined up with the rollers that are right here. This is really important. These are my T40 bolts that just come out of our secondary clutch. Take red Loctite, be generous with it, put a bunch of red Loctite on there. Now we're gonna go ahead, same thing, compress the helix, make sure it's in the right spot, and we're gonna tighten these bolts down and make sure we get them nice and tight. And it always helps if you have somebody else helping you, they can compress the clutch and you can line it up. Kind of is a two-man job, but I've done enough of these, I can get them myself. So I'm gonna make sure that's good there, make sure I'm good there. Go ahead and center this out. And then I'm going to move my sheaves so my holes are kind of lined up. And then I'm gonna take my knees here, get this aligned, get it started. You can see here, this hole's lined up, these aren't. That's why I didn't tighten it down super tight. Make sure everything looks good there. Rotate that. Okay, you're just run those down, touch them with the impact, and then just gonna have Riley here. He's gonna hold on to this so I can get my 3/8 ratchet and really snug these down tight. So that one's good. And then from there, we're gonna go ahead and reinstall our washer and go ahead and reinstall this big nut here that you use to adjust the belt deflection. So same thing as I was going off. Gonna do the same thing going back on. Get it walked on there, and then remember, it's left-handed thread, so gotta go left to go tight. And all I'm gonna do with this guy here, basically run it in until it's touching, because I'm gonna go through and I'm gonna set the belt deflection on at the end. All right, so now I'm gonna reinstall this secondary. What I'm gonna do is I got this tool here. I'm gonna line it up, go ahead, put it on here, and then I'm gonna spin it back onto this tool here. And then once I get it on there, I'm gonna slide this over, and then I have to get it back in my gear. So I'm going to put a little bit of pressure and find the splines of this upper gear in the chain case, which can kind of be a bugger sometimes, and it's kind of a real pain in the butt doing it with a screwdriver. So once I get the splines lined up and on there a little bit, then I'm gonna take my rubber mallet, and then I'm gonna line up this bearing here, and then I'm just gonna go ahead and seat that bearing. You can see that bearing, you want to make sure that bearing is flush. If not, what happens is if you don't get the bearing seated all the way and you put that bolt in on the chain case side, what happens is this tower here will actually bend, and it'll cause you some bearing issues and some clutch alignment issues. So you want to make sure you get that bearing seated all the way. I'm going to grab the bearing retainer. This is a nylock nut washer. Really, in theory, you don't have to put any sort of a Loctite on it. But the issue is if this ever comes loose, the first place it's going to go is it's going to drop straight into the belly pan, get picked up by the clutches, and it's going to trash both clutches and a belt. Install that there. Don't want to drop the nut down, pain in the butt to find it. while we're on the note of the Loctite, these two bolts here, these two go back here to hold that plastic shield. I have seen customers work on their sleds and I have seen these come out and it destroys the clutches, same thing. So when you're putting these back in, lots of red Loctite before you reinstall these. So we're gonna jump over here to the other side. Go ahead, make sure gear's on all the way, and then when you take this out, you'll see that my gear should be sitting flush with the shaft. So I'll take this tool, or you can kind of take a screwdriver and push that gear. That's kind of why this has on it. There you can feel that it's seated all the way. Now you can see that my gear and my shaft is flush. So from there, red Loctite again. Then we're gonna reinstall. So what I'm gonna do now is I got a 3/8 ratchet. I'm gonna set the park brake. If not, the sled's gonna wanna move. Then you're gonna wanna take this and get this nice and snug. As soon as I get done doing that, I've made this mistake once myself. As soon as you get that done, you're gonna wanna go ahead and just right then and there, go ahead and put your chain case plug back in the breather on it. If not, as soon as you go to ride it, it throws a ton of oil out and makes a mess. You don't need any tools or anything to get this on. You just gotta pop that rubber piece back into place and make sure it's sitting correct. Then we'll jump back over here, get ready to put the primary back on. All right, so if you look right down here, this crank is keyed. You can see there's a spot for a keyway here. If you do not get the clutch to sit correctly on this, if you get the key over here and you tighten it down, your clutch is gonna fall off or it's gonna explode. So you have to make sure you get your key to line there. I'm gonna look, I know that's basically at the bottom, tilted a little bit to the right. You can see the key there. Set this here, and then you can fill it, then you're gonna roll it, and boom, there's your key. So if you watch again, see, I'm pushing really hard right here, and I'm gonna roll that, boom, it drops. And then what you're gonna do is you're gonna check and make sure that your clutch is still aligned here. Make sure that didn't move on us. From there, I'm gonna go ahead, throw our primary bolt back in. Make sure you get this started, you don't strip the threads on it. We're gonna get it past its first set of threads for the puller. And then from there, you don't wanna just keep going with an impact or anything because you'll strip the threads. Now we're going into the crank. Gonna make sure, and then we're gonna go ahead and give it a couple ugger-duggers. And then we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna torque this clutch down to 89 foot-pounds. So I see a bunch of different stuff out there on the internet. Some of the older manuals, I believe they had 82 to 86 kind of a window. The newer ones I've seen have 89 foot-pounds. So set the torque wrench to 89, and then I'm gonna go ahead, put my little clutch holder on here, and I'm gonna just lock it up against that. And then go ahead. Ooh, almost had it perfect. It moved just a hair. So that's our first series of torque. So once you get the clutch on, torque it to 89. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hurry and throw the belt on. I'm gonna drive this machine forward and backwards about 5 to 10 feet, and then I'm gonna re-torque this. So what that does is when you drive it and that clutch spins up, everything's gonna set and compress. And this bolt's gonna end up varying from 60 foot-pounds to, or even less, you know, to 70, 80 foot-pounds. So it's really crucial that you do the second torque after you started the sled up and drove the sled, pulled the sled back and forth and let that clutch set. I'm gonna do a quick demonstration on how you change our magnets on the hill. All right, so this is my little crappy toolkit. It's not put together. 1/4-inch ratchet, T25. All you gotta do, if you're on the mountain, pull your belt off. You're just gonna go ahead and remove this T25 here. You're gonna, not remove it, you're gonna pull it partially out. So pull that out a little bit so you don't mess up the threads or bend the bolt. I have a little extension in my kit, just keeps me from hitting the sheave. Anyways, you're just gonna set that in there, and then all you're gonna do is just tap that pin over, loosen it a little bit more. Anyways, then you're gonna finish taking the bolt out, get the pin and this out of there so you don't lose it. Once you have that out, I just carry a little pry bar, flathead screwdriver work. You're gonna go ahead, take your extra weights that you carry with you. Yeah, a little ratchet fits in there nice. Just gonna put the ratchet in there. I'm just putting it between here and here, or you can put it in between here. Don't ever wanna pry against these. I find that this is the best place. What you don't wanna do is use something that you're gonna tear a bunch of stuff up. This ratchet works great for it. This works great for it because I can just put it in like this. Yeah, but anyways, we'll just use this little ratchet here. All you gotta do to get this weight out of here is you just gotta open the clutch 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch, and then the weight comes out, and then you can go ahead and adjust it from here. In the little weight box we send out, we send a little Allen wrench, and that is for removing these magnets. You can use a rivet. We've used rivets a ton. Anything that's really gonna get in there. After you made your adjustments to the weight, you're gonna do the same thing. You're gonna go ahead, get your weight down there, move that clutch that much. So all I did is just do that with the clutch. So once you get your weight back in there, don't need that on there anymore. Take your pin, you're gonna line your pin up. Magnets are nice for getting that lined up. You're gonna go ahead, put it in there, get this started. Kind of always got to hold the backside of the backside spin, so you just put a little bit of pressure against it. And these you don't want these super tight, you'll break them. You just want that, you'll feel that pin seat all the way flush and bottom out right there. And once you feel that, I just always give it a good 1/4 turn past, about 10 foot-pounds, just nice and snug, 7 to 10 foot-pounds, not super tight. From there, always make sure you don't leave your magnets in there. And you're gonna go ahead, take your belt, throw your belt on. Easiest way to get the belt on, just throw it like that, spin it, get it on the sheaves. Then as you can see, you can read the words, and my rotation's going from right to left. So now when setting your belt deflection, there's a little cord that's right here. Always like basically having that rib, that little cord right at the base of the rib, just barely poking through. Kind of depending on how many miles you have on your belt. But a good way to check is if I can grab a hold of this here and I can spin the belt around the clutch, but fairly hard, that's good. If I can't spin it, you're gonna be too tight. And if you can spin it really easy, if you can get a big old kind of a ripple in it, you're too loose. I'm just gonna pull this all the way out now. So I'm gonna take this, I'm gonna run this down to where it touches and just give it just a little bit more just to seat it in, and then go ahead, tighten this up, get that nice and snug. And now before I go any farther, I'm gonna hurry and fire the sled up, and I'm gonna pull it forward and backwards and get that clutch to seat. All right, after you drive it back and forth a little bit, I'm gonna go ahead and do our final torque on. Okay, we moved about a 1/4 turn there. Got that reset. Yeah, we're good. We're gonna go back together and go rip. Well, we are gonna put a 15 horse tune on this. So yeah, go rip it.